Good hello friends, my name is Mel and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be wrapping up January, saying goodbye to my birth month and saying hello to the month of love. This February I am participating in the X's and O's readathon, something I found out about pretty early on in January that I knew I definitely wanted to really kickstart my reading in February. And so this readathon is currently happening as you are watching this video. It runs from February 3rd to the 8th, so that means we're right at the tail end of this readathon. I'm not going to spoil my progress. That'll be in February's wrap up. However, I will show you what I'll be reading as well as wrapping up everything from last month. So before we get into all the books that I'm planning on reading this month, let's go ahead and talk about what I actually read, which I am so proud of because I read 6 books in the month of January, which is more than I thought I was going to. I read more physical books than I thought I was going to, and I actually am not unhauling a ton of books this month. I feel like the last couple of months have equaled me reading a physical book on my TBR that has been there for years and then promptly unhauling it because it's sad that it's been sitting there for that long. But this month is different. However, I am going to start off with a not as strong of a book as I thought it was going to be, and that's Gleanings by Neal Shusterman. Now you guys know I love the Arc of a Scythe series. I am a big fan of the trilogy, but these short stories just like weren't it. So I gave it a 3.5. All of that to say, I did enjoy it, but I didn't necessarily think it was needed considering it's been a couple of years since The Toll came out. I felt extremely satisfied with my experience with The Toll. I had so much fun rereading it, and I think the world itself is very complex and really interesting. However, I do remember that at the signing, Neal did say that there were a couple of stories that people would have loved to have seen, and so he thought putting it together in a book combined with multiple authors was going to make this world kind of stand out a little bit more. I just personally think it was done a little too late. I have my gripes with it. However, I will say my favorite story is Xenocrates' his origin story was so good. And I think that story should have just been put somewhere within the Arc of a Scythe trilogy. I enjoyed it. It was fine. I think if you're more of a fan of the series, like you're like a die-hard, which I thought I was, but apparently I'm not, then you'll appreciate this a lot more, but it just didn't stand out as much as I wanted it to. Moving on to my 5-star this month, My Hero Academia Volume 1 gets all of the stars. I love this series as a show, and I love this series as a manga. So if you don't know the premise of My Hero, essentially we are in a world where individuals have quirks, and these quirks give them supernatural powers that this world has then taken and turned them into heroes. These heroes essentially change the world, and so there was a need to train these students and train these individuals with quirks, and so the Academy, Hero Academia, was born. We follow Midoriya, who is the sweetest little nugget in the entire world. He is one of my favorite protagonists ever, one of my favorite heroes ever, in his journey to understanding where he fits into all this. And it's the start of a wonderful story. So what I will say is, being back in this world from the beginning while the series as an anime is happening at the same time, like I have no idea how far along the anime matches up with the manga right now, but watching the story from where it is now and reading it from the beginning, like Midoriya has grown so much, and so revisiting just all of this from the get-go is so much fun, and I had such a pleasure reading it. And I think my favorite part are these like character builds, essentially, where you can see why the author chose to make them the way that they are. Like Bakugo, literally it was just this like sweeter genius version before, but even the artist was like, this made me angry, I didn't like this, so he turned him into a little piece of shit, and I love it. So 5 stars. Mwah. I can't wait to keep reading this. Up next was unfortunately another disappointing book, and that was Booked on a Feeling by Jessie Lee. This is number 3 in the Sweet Mess series, and you guys know that I read A Sweet Mess and, oh god, what's the second one called? Whatever the second one's called. In this series, out of order. I read book 2 and then I read book 1, and now I've read book 3. And I think book 3 is the weakest out of all of them. The premise of this is we have the 2 best friends who reconnect as she is spending her time. I don't even remember what her name is, the main character's name, the girl's name. She is a lawyer in LA, and she comes back to Weldon and is choosing to live her life there that summer. She just won this massive case, and then pursue the romantic interest who is the accountant of the bar at the the premise of this just felt way too weak. Like, yes, we're in an established world. These are characters we've met once, maybe. So just the way it was set up, I felt was really weak. And then the whole world, I guess, or the whole story is bookish. Like, they're building a library and there's a lot of bookish references, and you know, oh, this isn't one of those stories out of a book, this is real life, is literally something that our main character said, and then something tropey happened like right after. So with this, I think it was just like too cheesy for me. I couldn't enjoy it the same way as the other books, and it was just like, it just felt flat. The characters didn't feel super real. Their conflicts were just like, it just didn't feel like a likely conflict to happen. It just felt like conflict happened to happen and progress the story. However, I do love this world, and I did enjoy being back in it. And you know, it was a romance. It was a light read, but I still gave it 2.5 stars. Moving on to a book that I did not think I would rate as high as I did from the beginning is Starfish by Akemi Dawn Bowman. I gave this a 4-star, but this is a heavy book. Like, I look at these pages and I'm like, okay, this is easy to read. And it was. It was extremely easy to read in terms of the pages. But the content of this story is so much darker than I thought it was going to be. So Kiko Himura is half American, half Japanese, I believe it was. Yes, half Japanese, half American. And she is living with her mother, who is extremely abusive emotionally and verbally. And she basically like screwed Kiko up from the very beginning. There's a lot of mistrust between the two of them, and it's just not a healthy relationship. The way this book, however, goes into understanding that relationship, goes into understanding how Kiko processes all of those feelings and how she learns to move forward with it, was so beautifully done. Like, this book genuinely hurt to read, but it was so easy to just keep flipping, and it's so consumable. I was able to read like 200 pages of this in one sitting, and I probably would have finished it in like a day, honestly, if I didn't need a break. Like, it just gets heavy, and you're just sitting there and you're like, oh my god, like, when does this end for this poor girl? And like, when does she finally find herself? And it's hard, because that's the purpose. Like, that, it's not easy to get to that point. And I think Akemi Dawn Bowman did such a good job of portraying that while still emphasizing like, you can get through this even though it's going to be difficult. So I love this. It hurt my heart, but I'm keeping this book as just such a good reminder. I don't know, it was good. It was really good, but it was really hard to read. Definitely some trigger warnings for child abuse, emotional abuse. There are instances of sexual abuse in this as well as some racism. So just kind of be prepared when you're going to this book, because it's gonna be hard, but I definitely think it's worth a read. Moving on to a slightly lighthearted book. I read The Fraud Squad, and this one was totally by accident, in the sense that I guess I put a hold on it at my library. I got the hold, I borrowed it, and I listened to it, and I gave it like a 3.5, 3.75. So the whole premise behind this story is we have our little PR girly who ends up in a very rich Asian circle. She devises this plan with this beautiful hunk of a man who is extremely well known in Asia, and he essentially has to turn her into a socialite to originally prove to his parents that he can do anything. He doesn't need to take on the family business, but it's also benefiting her because she gets to be a socialite and enjoy all these benefits because she wants to be a big journalist in the celebrity influencer space. Look, the premise of this story is super fun. It's extremely exciting. It's got a lot going for it, but there's also a lot going on in this story. There's a lot of deceit, and honestly, it's not a super satisfying ending considering how much our main character lies throughout the entirety of this book. Like, she knows she's lying. She totally knows she's lying. She's lying to everybody that she knows. She's lying to her mother. She's lying to her best friend. She's creating this whole facade. But the way I ate this book up, it was like watching, I don't know, like a really intense sitcom, or like watching The Bachelor on crack. Like, I don't know, man. I listened to this book non-stop. There was like one morning where I woke up and I put my AirPods in and I was just like laying here in bed scrolling and listening, and I loved it. However, I will say, again, not a super satisfying ending, and I feel like she got off way too easy with all of, like, she didn't get punished enough for like literally anything that happened. And it was just like, oop, put into a little box. Everybody's gonna forget that any of that happened. There were a lot of good moments, but also a lot of bad moments. And as somebody in PR, I absolutely hated how PR was portrayed sometimes. The author is a journalist, so she knows the flip end of it. She doesn't necessarily know PR, you know, and I'm not gonna sit here and be like, she doesn't know PR. But a piece of me, I was like, man, like, I work in PR. I love PR. That's not how PR is all the time. But again, I work in a US market. This book is set internationally. Very different. I digress. And finally, the last book that I read in the month of January was The Lovely Reckless by Cami Garcia, and I don't know why none of you prepared me for how chaotic this was. I don't have words for this book. I gave it a 4-star. Is a 4-star rating fair for this book? No. This book was trash, but I fucking loved it. So I'm going to describe this as Bring It On 2, where the girl goes from like her preppy high school to the, I don't know, other high school, right? Like she transfers high school. She's this cute little blonde preppy girl who gets put in her fucking place. Meets Fast and Furious, I guess. It's so funny to me because it really is like the premise of Bring It On 2, but it gets a lot darker than I thought it was going to. It's like if The Outsiders was put into modern times, meets Bring It On, meets Fast and Furious, because they're street racing. This town is made for street racing. We have our main character Frankie and then our main love interest Marco. Like, I inhaled this book. Okay, I was going to Joshua Tree Sunday morning. I woke up at 6 a.m. so I could finish this, and I read like 200 pages in like 3 hours, maybe not even 2 hours, like an hour and a half. Okay, like I loved my experience with this book because it was just so fast paced. It was very much like reminiscent of what me at 13 would have enjoyed, but I was rolling my eyes at it because I was like, oh my god, this is so bad. But like I loved how my reading experience with this book was. Granted, our main character Frankie has some fucking trauma. Like, this bitch is... The book opens with, like, here's the night that my boyfriend died. She is going through it. She needs therapy. She has so much trauma. But she works through it with this, like, newfound family and this new understanding of what it means to be, you know, a teenager who was once in love and had to experience such a heavy loss. But also it was so predictable. All of it, like I knew who done it essentially, but like it was so predictable, but it was so much fun. And like I think I just needed something like lighthearted slash drama, suspense, action filled, and just right, it was like something new happened every single chapter and something new is revealed every single chapter, and I think that's what made this reading experience so enjoyable, even though I was rolling, like it's such a predictable book. And Colleen Hoover, Jennifer L. Armentrout, Anna Todd, Tahira Mafi, Marie Lu, like all of these authors have dubbed this book in one way or another. So I knew what I was going into when I saw how they were speaking about it, but it was just, I ate it up and I'm so glad I finally read it. So those were all the books that I read in January. Now for the books that I'm planning on reading in February. This is going to be a short TBR because I primarily set my TBR based on the X's and O's readathon. I'm on Team O. So there are 4 prompts for the X's and O's readathon. The 4th book being the book read, which is X's and O's. I'll be reading this over audiobook. I just got the loan literally yesterday, so I'm super excited to finally have it in my hands, essentially because the readathon's almost over and I want to make sure that I actually read it. I have no idea what this book is about. None. I have no idea whatsoever at all. So I'm gonna keep it that way. I'm not even gonna look up what the synopsis is. I am just going to start reading it today and see what happens. But for my prompts, the first one is Friends to Lovers, and you've seen this book on several TBRs now. People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. They are best friends who go on vacation together. They had nothing in common until 2 years ago when they ruined everything. I have no idea what this book is about. It just gets talked about a lot. It's been on my shelf for a while. Looks like we're finally giving it a read this month. The next is, you know those little heart-shaped candies? Little heart-shaped candies with the little sayings like, be mine, blah, blah, blah. Each team has 4 hearts that they can match a word to the prompt. So like a word from the book has to match one of the words on the little hearts. And so love was on one of the O prompts. So I'm going to read The Mambo King Plays Songs of Love by Oscar Hijuelos. This is the 25th anniversary edition. I literally do not know what this book is about at all, but it's long. Like it has classic print to it. Long. It is 400 pages long. So, and finally, prompt number 3 for me was pink on the cover, and I had a lot of options for this, but I chose Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. This is now on Peacock streaming, and I think this book has been recommended to me / a bunch of people I know have loved this book who have read it already, so I'm super excited to have this book in consideration for this month. And again, I'm not going to spoil my thoughts for any of these books because when you're seeing this, I might have already read some of these. I've been really enjoying my nonfiction books a lot more than I thought I was going to this year especially, so I'm definitely making a lot more of them a priority and buying a lot more of them too. So these are the 3 books that I'll be reading for the readathon, and honestly, this is really just my goal for this month. I think I blew it out of the park last month for myself personally. I read 6 books last month. If I can read 3 this month, I'll be so satisfied. I'm already 3 books ahead of my Goodreads goal, and I know that's not the measurement, but it feels... I just dropped a book. And I know we said this is not how we're measuring success this year, but it feels really good for Goodreads to tell me that I'm ahead by 3 books. That still means that I'm gonna keep reading, and I am so excited for the month of love and all the books that it's going to bring. So with that long-winded video over, I feel like I've been talking for like an hour. I hope you guys have a great reading month in February. If you enjoyed today's video, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And until then, I'll catch you in the next one.